Coming up on this edition of Connecting Point, we re-examine a contentious week of election results.
There's this question about the certification, but we never have all the votes counted on election night, ever, ever, ever.
She was already a superstar senator, and people who saw her like sitting there, like, you know, basically deposing people in these hearings, it was like, she's different, she's special, she is ripping people apart.
Alpha Kappa Alpha is special because we were the first Greek letter organization to be founded by women of color way back in 1908. And this came about at a time in our history where we were just one generation removed from slavery.
That's all next on The State We're In, our weekly look at politics.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
Hello, I'm Dara Kennedy. As the nation took a collective sigh of relief after one of the longest and most anxious elections in our history, we realized that not only did we contribute to the highest voter turnout ever, but American ballots cast served up several firsts for our nation. I spoke with author and cultural expert Toure on the defining moments that will forever change the United States political landscape.
It's just exciting for our girls, especially, to see a woman break that glass ceiling and get so close to the presidency and know that it's possible. And you know how thoughtful Kamala is about such things when she's saying in her initial acceptance speech, like, you know, yes, this is like for the girls who, like, you know, can see like I'm the first and I will not be the last. And she links herself to history, but also to the future of what's coming. She's going to is already an inspiration for so many people. And it's exciting to see. She's an amazing person.
No, she's a star. What do you think separates her and Hillary? And I don't mean this to pit them against each other, but the excitement that you saw on Saturday after, you know, the race was finally called for the Democratic ticket, and people were just, you know, shouting Kamala's name, and, you know, it was like, oh yeah, Joe's president, but Kamala. I felt like, you know, I covered the 2016 Hillary election and I did this one. There was a different energy. What do you think that was?
Hillary has been a political star for a couple of decades, including the rise of Fox News. And she, in particular, and her husband were two of the larger villains in the rise of Fox News. And, you know, there's been so much baggage put on her, so many attacks put on her, so much untruthfulness put upon her, and so much is put into the name of Clinton that to run, she was not only running against Trump and for different ideas, but against the person who the right has wrongfully painted her as for several decades. And, you know, all of those headwinds were a lot for her to deal with, as opposed to Kamala, who's somebody newer on the national political scene. And so she doesn't have that to deal with. And I think you're going to see perhaps more of that as we go along. Barack Obama running for president successfully in his first term as senator. Kamala running for vice president successfully, you know, very early in her national political career. The less time you spend on the national stage, the less stuff you accumulate with which people can attack you. The longer you stay there, you acquire like experience, but there's more things that are happening that people can say, oh, you did this, you did that, you made compromises, you know, and then it starts to ruin your potentials. I think in 2016, some people felt like Hillary was not enough for us. She did not excite us enough. And we're talking about a margin, right? I mean, like some of these states are won by 10, 20, 30,000 votes out of 6 million, 7 million. So, you know, most people can go believing in Hillary, but then when you get to the margins of like that last like 100,000 votes you need to get past the other person, You can't get it when Trump is directly speaking. But I thought one thing that was really interesting in 2016, as evil as he is, Trump's campaign had a real purpose, right? And you see that in the slogans. Most presidential campaigns can't come up with a real slogan that really matters and resonates, right? They're lucky to get one. Trump 2016 had like 5, right? And you fully understood what he was about, right? In terms of drain the swamp and lock her up. He's talking about, we're going to return DC to the people, right? Build a wall. He's talking about immigration and empowering white people, right? MAGA, right? We're going to return to the way things were in the 1950s again, empowering white people. So, there's a clear message for working class white people in red states in the Midwest saying, we are here for you. And people heard that. And I think a lot of people found his shtick really interesting and fun and believed in him. I think a lot of those people didn't really care about the political system and they were happy to watch it burn. But that's partly because they were disaffected by the political system. Trump 2020 had 0 slogans. What was it about? It was about, I'm the victim. The election is not working out for me. The media's out to get me. Everyone's out to get me, right? Like, he didn't have any slogans. He didn't have any purpose. He didn't have any direction. And that's a large part of why he was unable to rally the same intensity of coalition that he had. He got more votes than he did in 2016, but Biden got way more votes than him because there's so many people were like, we cannot have more Trump. I think a lot of people came out to vote for Biden, but obviously a lot of people came out to vote against Trump. And that's why you saw these sort of ecstatic celebrations on Saturday all across the country. Not so much for Biden. I think when Obama won, it was for Obama. But this time it was like, oh God, we are done with Trump. Thank God. The chaos, the racism, the incompetence, just like, oh, adults are flying the plane again. Like, thank God.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was more against him. I won't keep you too much longer. So culturally, how much do you think that was an impact on getting people to the polls culturally? Like the people, how much did hip hop play in it? How much the Latino vote was huge generally across the country? Obviously, they did their own thing in Florida, but even they still came out to vote, regardless of which way they came out. Whichever way they voted, they still came out. Culturally, how important was it and is it for this election?
I'm not sure that there was this big cultural thing where like a Beyonce or a Jay-Z or a whoever made a difference.
She didn't come out until the end, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was a cultural thing. I think that people understood from years earlier, oh my God, this person is horrendous. He is unable to deal with the job of the presidency. We have to get rid of him. And like to have coronavirus come and attack the country the way it did, I think a lot of people saw a very tangible, it was no longer abstract, right? Before that, it was abstract and we were arguing and the idea that like, well, he seems bad, but how's your 401k? Like a lot of people were making that calculation. With coronavirus, it was like, this is no longer abstract. Like this is directly affecting everyone's life. If you didn't get sick or have somebody in your family or your friend circle die of the thing, then, your job was getting affected and you're having to wear a mask everywhere you go and your kids are at home and you're driving each other nuts because your kids are at home all the time, not going to school and they can't go to summer camp. And that surely had a huge impact on the country. And even still, if he had rolled up his sleeves for once in his life and actually done the job and tried to push back COVID the way that he could have, I think that he could have possibly won.
With us being in the Northeast, you're originally from Boston. You're a Brooklynite now. These are blue areas. What we're seeing in America today, this division, which really goes along the Mason-Dixon lines. Are you surprised?
Not entirely. We got Georgia now, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, we're trying to, they're trying to flip Georgia. Are you surprised at the divisiveness? I'm just going to say I'm a little thrown back by it. And maybe I've just been living in a naive Democratic East Coast for so long that I figure, once you get 75 million votes, the country's going to be happy. The country is not happy. We're at each other's throats.
We have two separate realities, and I don't even want to put those two realities on the same plane, because we have, blue states, blue cities, people on the left who are dealing with reality in terms of politics, in terms of science, in terms of media, in terms of what's going on with immigration and race and climate, these sort of things. And we have a right wing which is not dealing with reality at all. They are acting like the election is not over. They're acting like they don't need to wear masks. They're acting like climate change is not a big problem. They're acting like, immigration remains a big problem, and they are streaming across the border when in fact, immigration's been at a net negative for well over a decade. So more people are going to Mexico than coming here. On all sorts of issues, the right acts like and believes the opposite of the truth. And they are told to not believe science, not believe media. We almost jokingly say it's a cult, but if you had a singular leader who was telling a group of people, don't believe what anyone else tells you, only believe what I tell you. And even if I contradict reality, only believe what I tell you. What would you call that? You would call that a cult. And part of the problem is that we have a media ecosystem whereby, half of the country is listening to Fox News, which is actively telling them, don't listen to anything else. You cannot trust the New York Times, MSNBC, and CNN. CNN and MSNBC and New York Times don't make a core message out of you can't trust Fox. Fox, that's part of their whole thing. So they sort of wall their people in to a belief system where you can only believe what we tell you, and we're not going to be telling you the truth. The Fox narrative, we can go on, books have been written about the Fox narrative, but it is leading people to not believe science, to believe that Black and brown people are the core of the problem in the country, to not believe the truth around immigration, and to now not believe the truth around the election. They continue to seriously believe that the election is not over, that Trump will somehow be found the winner when the dust settles. It is bizarre.
Bizarre is a good word. I remember when you were at CNN, you were the cultural reporter there, and then you started doing, politics, more politic talk over at MSNBC. And you've spoken to a lot of these politicians recently, even on your podcast. The conversation you had with Cory Booker, I think he shed a lot of light as to what this culture is going to look like if we do start going to the polls, which is exactly what the lesser voice and the minority did this cycle.
One thing that was really interesting, in 2016, as evil as he is, Trump's campaign had a real purpose, right? And you see that in the slogans. Most presidential campaigns can't come up with a real slogan that really matters and resonates, right? They're lucky to get one. Trump 2016 had like 5, right? And you fully understood what he was about, right? In terms of drain the swamp and lock her up. He's talking about, we're going to return DC to the people, right? Build a wall. He's talking about immigration and empowering white people, right? MAGA, right? We're going to return to the way things were in the 1950s, again, empowering white people. So, there's a clear message for working class white people in red states in the Midwest saying, we are here for you. And people heard that. And I think a lot of people found his shtick really interesting and fun and believed in him. I think a lot of those people didn't really care about the political system and they were happy to watch it burn. But that's partly because they were disaffected by the political system. The big story of this election for me is that Black people came out in droves and supported the Democratic Party at upwards of 90%, like well over 90%, especially Black women.
It is historically designed as an easy process. You vote for your candidate and you wait for the winner to be announced. Election night has also been known to be somewhat of an exciting time for friends to gather and watch, but the 2020 presidential race took 4 days to call a winner, and Over a week later, America is embroiled in a fight for its democracy and its patience. Dr. Rachael Cobb, professor of political science and legal studies at Suffolk University, is also a national expert with the MIT Election Lab. She explains to me why the math that we think is so simple for what was America's most secure election in history is actually a bit more complicated. She also states why representation matters.
We always take time to count all of the final ballots to give the final results of the election. And those final ballots always include the overseas ballots, the provisional ballots, and any other ballots that were in question. So every election administrator sort of has their time to get to essentially make sure that their books add up and that all of the votes are counted. And then they send that certification over to the Secretary of State, who then certifies the election.
They feel like, the Republicans feel like their votes have not been counted enough, I guess. And I know you've worked kind of on the numbers aspect of this. What are Americans getting wrong in terms of the math here?
So what I think we actually saw is some split ticket voting for Republicans where they didn't vote for President Trump for president, but they did vote for the Republican on the down ballot. So I think the math adds up, but the result is disappointing to some. And that is always the case in elections, right? There's always a winner and there's always a loser, but the math is the math.
That can be kind of confusing though, right? Because on election night or the next day or the next day or the next day as we are, you want to look and say, Vice President-elect Joe Biden won by over 4 million popular votes. That doesn't count. Hillary Clinton won by over 3 million popular votes. She wasn't the president. But the 290 or the 279 that actually put Joe Biden in the House, many Americans feel like, great, he's in the House if I voted for him. He's going to the White House if I voted for him. So why isn't it counting?
I think actually the math adds up. The issue is, so Republicans may be very upset that the office of the president did not go their way, but many of the offices for lower down ballot races, such as Senate and House, actually did go their way.
If you had the opportunity to be on campus as a freshman or attend collegiate homecoming games, then you probably recall the rush and curiosity of joining various member clubs. Well, before Senator Harris was voted vice president-elect, she was just like us, an undergrad trying to find her way. And that she did on Howard University's campus in the 1980s. She joined the debate club, but she also pledged the first and oldest Black sorority in the country, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. Her chapter falls under the leadership of Mary Bentley LaMar. She's the director of the North Atlantic region, which is also the birthplace of the sorority and home to 140 chapters just in the East. She shared with me the meaning of her soror's victory and the AKA's century-long mission to serve.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am very excited, as well as all of my sorority sisters everywhere from Washington, D.C. to Maine. And that's just the North Atlantic region. Multiply that around the world, and all 300,000 Alpha Kappa Alpha women are very excited about this moment in history, and I will say her story.
That is right, her story. After the announcement came out on Saturday, it seemed like everywhere you looked, there were celebrations, but there was a lot of pink and green. I can go down the list. There's Chicago, Philadelphia, California, Florida, Tampa, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Chicago, Detroit. It goes on and on and on with hundreds of thousands of women, sorority sisters from Kamala Harris that were just so excited. This isn't just a regular sorority from when we were in college. What makes this sorority so special, Mary?
Well, Alpha Kappa Alpha is special because we were the first Greek letter organization to be founded by women of color way back in 1908. And this came about at a time in our history where we were just one generation removed from slavery. Yet women wanted to uplift each other and support each other through scholarship, through service, and that has sustained itself over 112 years now. And Alpha Kappa Alpha, we have lifelong service. We not only start in college, our undergraduates are wonderful, and they have an opportunity to continue that that sisterhood and that service throughout their entire life. We have graduate chapters all over the country and different parts of the world.
It's very exciting because under your leadership, well, you also are leadership of where Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect Harris, where she pledged undergrad at a historically Black college and university at Howard University. So that, you know, we talk about a lot of first, her being the first woman, her being the first woman of color. She's also the first HBCU to have a role in vice president role in the White House.
Yes, and that is so exciting because an HBCU, for those who don't know, historically Black college and university, those are institutions that came about out of a struggle, a time when we did not have educational outlets on the college level. So over 100 years ago, when these HBCUs were founded, it was an opportunity for us to get educated when no one else wanted to give us that high quality education that the historically Black colleges and universities enjoy. Now, what's great about this is everyone can now see the caliber of individuals that the HBCUs produce. And one of the things that we do in Alpha Kappa Alpha is we support the HBCUs through an initiative called HBCUs for Life. We've raised over $1 million in one day for the second year in a row. Our sorority sisters raised over $1 million in one day to support the HBCUs. So it is very much a commitment on the part of our organization. And I will say it was spearheaded, and all of us are led by our international president, Dr. Glenda Baskin Glover, who thought of this initiative and kept it going. And we have raised quite a lot of money to support the HBCUs. So for Kamala Harris to come from an HBCU, be that example of what can be produced, the type of individual, the service, the commitment, the intelligence, the experience, HBCUs, we certainly applaud them. And you can just look at Kamala Harris and see the fruits of the labor.
Yeah, I know that Alpha Kappa Alpha, you know, full disclosure, I'm legacy, so I come from a family of AKAs. But one thing that separates the AKAs from some of the others is that you are built on the level of service. And some people say, oh, that's great, Kamala Harris is an AKA. But it goes way beyond Kamala Harris. Dr. Coretta Scott King, who was Dr. Martin Luther King's wife, was an AKA. Maya Angelou was an AKA. I mean, maybe to some of our viewers from The Cosby Show, you know, Claire Huxtable, Felicia Rashad is an AKA. So there's a long list of established women who are civically engaged to the community that have been in the organization for years.
Absolutely. And many don't know, but Eleanor Roosevelt was an AKA.
Did not know that. I did not know that. That is great. So, I mean, so these are the things, you know, and Senator Harris has said along on this campaign trail that she will be focused on helping to continue to fund HBCUs, but as well just to continue to be the pillar for women. And not, you know, not just women of color, but just women in general in this role, whether they're Deltas, AKAs, or Phi Gamma Sigmas. It's important that she continues that leadership.
Exactly. And you mentioned some of the other members in the Divine Nine. A lot of individuals are coming to understand what some of these terms are, but the Divine Nine is the name for all the traditionally Black fraternities and sororities. There are mainly 9 who are represented. And what's great about Kamala is she acknowledges not just the Divine Nine, but all the wonderful aspects of her background in terms of her being from Asian American background, from even West Indian. She's got lineage in Jamaica, even in terms of like the Divine Nine, the sororities, and the HBCUs. So all the different aspects of her background lets us know, or it's an example of how she represents new voices at the table, or voices that have been making noise for a while, but finally, hopefully we will be heard. So I think that's important to recognize.
That is very important. Well, here in the Northeast, I know in Massachusetts, they were out celebrating. And again, like we said, across the country, over 1,000 chapters worldwide. I know that you've got a fundraising event that is coming up. I know things have kind of slowed down because of the pandemic, but your fundraising will continue into 2021. Is that correct?
Well, let me just clarify. When you say fundraising, we are fundraising for HBCUs and for other community service projects. As a nonpartisan organization, we as a group do not fundraise for individual candidates, but as an individual, I can certainly, and I encourage individuals to support the candidates of their choice. And there's still an election going on in Georgia, so that may be an opportunity for individuals to be civically engaged.
Well, that does it for this edition of Connecting Point. Remember, you can find us online anytime at nepm.org/Connecting Point. I'm Dara Kennedy. Thanks for watching.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers